Welcome. My name's Timothy Clancy. I'm the Chief Mulleteer, and this is the InfoMullet. After pause for the last 2 years while I finished my PhD and work on some other things, we're relaunching the InfoMullet YouTube channel with the 2024 presidential election coming up. There's going to be a lot we can talk about. We're going to have some new formats to do it. So what is the InfoMullet? Well, it's a blog, it's a video channel, it's a collection of social media sites. All the links are below. What's the purpose of the InfoMullet? Well, we provide analysis and commentary on complex events going on in the world that you might be interested in. We're not just trying to tell you what's going on, but why it might be happening. What are the structures underneath it? Equipping you with the tools, the media literacy, the systems thinking approach, the ability to look at it so you can come to your own conclusions. Who's our audience? The fellow members of the league are anyone from anywhere in the world with any education or background. People who look at an event, they want to know more than just what happened. They want to know what happened, but why did it happen? What happens next? What may happen next? What are the different things that may happen next? What would cause one thing to happen over another? What should we do with this information? And finally, how confident are we in our understanding? Why do we call this the InfoMullet? Well, I've been analyzing and providing commentary on events since 2002. And when I write, I often write in long form content to give people the full context. And online, everyone would say TLDR, too long, didn't read. Well, that became the joke and how we came up with the name InfoMullet. It's TLDR up front, full context in the back. We give you what you need to know early on. If that's just what you want, you can move on, but you're going to get the full context in the back. And, I'm kind of happy with mullets. So what kind of content can you find here? First, check out our playlists over on the YouTube, as there's already a lot of existing content from we were running this from 2020 up through 2022 during the pandemic. I would do long form 1 to 2 hour live Ask Me Anythings on Facebook, have 300 to 500 people watching in. We'd take questions live. I'd cover 5 to 8 different topics, maybe 10 to 15 minutes each. And then we'd put that up on the YouTube, both in long form and splice it up. So check out the playlist. There's a lot of content there, everything from pandemic information, domestic and foreign affairs, criminal violence, economic issues, policy issues, violence and instability, even to my annual New Year's Eve forecast. Going forward, we're going to try and have a mix of short and long form content. We're going to bring back that feeling of the live Ask Me Anything format we used during the pandemic, but rather than doing twice a week scattered on a bunch of topics, we're going to pick one topic and I'm going to dive deep into that topic. That's an hour or 2 hours on one single topic, doing the research and information to give you the full context. Then our Patreon subscribers are going to have an exclusive chance to join when we videotape that and be kind of like the live audience asking those live Ask Me Anything questions. That way, it's not just me presenting information, but that back and forth and Q&A and sort of live interaction that we really enjoyed before. Once we get that, as soon as we edit it, get it cleaned up, we're going to put it up on YouTube. Nothing we do on the InfoMullet is ultimately hidden behind a paywall or time released or anything like that. I'm also going to be adding some new formats. I'll be doing guest interviews with people who can bring a different perspective to some of the topics we talk about. I'm going to continue experimenting with the live modeling that I tried out. I take a topic that's of interest and I try and do a live systems thinking model live on YouTube, documenting that system structure on the first go. But if you like the written form of content, check out the blog at infomullet.com. We have short form InfoMullets, long form mega mullets, and in-depth New Year's Eve Ask Me Anything forecast. From all of these, you'll find the sources at the bottom. Again, I don't want to just tell you a bunch of stuff and then have you wondering where I'm getting it. I always put my sources at the bottom. If we have Q&A in any of our social media sites, I try and add that discussion at the bottom so you can see what other people are asking, maybe find out some more insights that way. There's also posts called lightly sourced commentary where I'm not using as much of the research in the source and I'm just kind of giving you my opinion, but you're going to know it. We even have a humor section. This may be satire. I had to start calling this may be satire because when I'd post these, people would think they were real and get really upset. So now it's called this may be satire. There's also a whole bunch of historical mullets. That's any blog post that comes from before about 2016, 2017, which is the most recent incarnation. As I've been saying, I've been doing this analysis and commentary since 2002 or so. So if you go onto the blog, you're going to see that our first commentary is literally analyzing Putin and Bush with their foreign policy in 2002. We have an entire section analyzing leading up to the Iraq War, going into the Iraq War. There's about 300 posts on the InfoMullet blog now, but we've actually got a backlog of over 1,000 posts from LiveJournal and Facebook covering from 2002 all the way up through 2020. And we're recovering those as we get. So over time, if you keep checking out that historical mullets, you're going to see all the trends and topics and things that were interesting from the healthcare reform debates, the continuation of the Iraq War, the financial collapse, the start of the Ukraine-Russian conflict in 2014. All of those are going up, and there'll be specific sections on the historical mullet blog. So if you want to go back and look at what people were saying and doing back when something was happening, that's a chance to do so. It's also a great source for research. Who am I? So who is this chief muleteer? Well, problems are my passion, and this passion has led to a career of 2 arcs. The first arc spanned about 30 years working with organizations, government, military, and nonprofits to solve their wicked mess problems. The second arc of that career was to study how we look at complex systems and what tools we use to understand and help solve those wicked mess problems. That journey led to deployment as a civilian with the US military in Afghanistan. That's where I first encountered system dynamics. That's a language for complex system that gives us a vocabulary, a grammar, and a syntax, a very rigorous scientific approach to studying complex systems. 3 years after that, I left my position at IBM, where I was the chief methodologist of Lean Six Sigma and Agile. I did that so I could focus entirely on learning these tools of system dynamics and systems thinking. I went to school at Worcester Polytech Institute, where I got my Master's of Science in 2016 in simulation science and insurgency dynamics. And then I got my PhD, just finished it in 2022, walked the stage in 2023. That PhD is in system dynamics, focused on the life cycle of violence and instability of non-state actors. Currently, I'm a research scientist in analyzing, specializing in asymmetric and irregular conflicts. That includes radicalization, terrorism, mass shootings, insurgencies, civil wars, civil conflicts, ethnic conflicts, all the stuff that we're kind of seeing happen in the world around us. And I can bring that expertise and that looking at these conflicts, not just on the surface level of who did what, but what's the underlying structure and cycle that's building up over time that drives the dynamics we see in the evening news. Now, I also do a lot of adjacent research into areas that aren't quite my PhD specialty, but are related. This could be conventional warfare, criminal violence, toxic or abusive relationships. I do a lot of volunteer work on reducing toxicity, harassment, and sexual assault in volunteer communities. Anyone who's known me over the last 20 years or so knows that I'm a news hound. I love reading the news. I love immersing myself in the news. So we're going to go over a lot more topics than that. That's just the area I have a special expertise in. I'll occasionally share clips of my research. I go and I do a conference. I might do a plenary or a parallel. If it makes a good video, we'll throw it up. I get invited onto podcasts. We'll make links to those on the blog so you can see other people's takes on these and the questions and interviews I'm fielding. If you want to see any of my published peer-reviewed research, those just check out the links below. That's where it's at. It's going to be a little denser. It's more of an academic format. So if you're not familiar with that, it might be a little heavy. And remember, if you ever run into a paywall for one of these academic journals with anything I've published, and that happens. I can't really control who puts what behind a paywall. I try and make things open access when I can. But if you run into something and you're not able to get a copy of an article, just hit me up on any of these social media sites, Facebook Messenger, Xitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, any of those, and I'll go ahead and get you a copy. As an author, I can give you a free copy if you ask, so just go ahead and ask. If you want to see what I'm working on, well, hit me up on ResearchGate or SSRN. I'm also the president of Dialectic Simulations Consulting. That's a firm specializing in helping individuals and organizations solve their wicked mess problems with structured systems thinking and these computer simulations built with system dynamics. Now, for transparency, though you won't see me pitching any VPN routers or mobile game products on this, you will see me pitch our structured systems thinking training. Don't worry, what I do here is a labor of love. I've done it a lot longer than I've been at Dialectic, and everything we make for the InfoMullet is produced freely online. But when it comes to structured systems thinking training, if you want more than what you're getting here, check out some of our training. We do have some free training articles that you can go look at for free. There's different subscription services that I've been hosted on that if you have a professional subscription through your work, you may be able to see some of my work there. We also have our own dialectic awareness, beginner, introduce, and advanced systems thinking training. All of our current offerings, if you want to see what we have available, go to dialecticsims.com/our-services/training. Everything that I have is up there with links so you can go find and read for yourself. Now, our Patreon subscribers do get periodic access where I'll give a free training session, something I might do for dialectic, the awareness training, or maybe a class from the beginner training. Check us out on patreon.com/infomullet. But don't worry about if you're not able to make a Patreon or you're not in that position. Just like, click, subscribe, and follow. We're really doing this to get out that fuller context, especially as we get into the 2024 election. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for more context, and hopefully we're able to provide that. Who is Bonkey, right? Bonkey's in the back there. You see him. So that's Bonkey. Bonkey is the lovable, cuddly mascot of the InfoMullet. When I started to do the live Ask Me Anythings in the pandemic, I knew we'd be covering a lot of serious topics. So I put out a casting call for any lovable stuffed animals to ride shotgun with my things. You'll see him when I do these. If you go back through the videos, he's usually sitting over here. Bonkey answered that call, and oddly, as soon as he showed up, everyone else either withdrew or went into hiding. Bonkey has an origin story of his and background all of his own, but we generally don't talk about it because most of it's still classified or pending litigation. What's my bias and the bias of the InfoMullet? I think it's really important to disclose the bias. We all have it. My personal bias is that I'm a radical moderate politically, a cynical optimist personality-wise, and a foot soldier of the Enlightenment from a philosophical perspective. So you're going to see that bias on the InfoMullet based on the topics I cover and how I cover them. I'm being very upfront with that. But I also try and follow some first principle values that I want to embody in the InfoMullet. The first is speaking truth to power means criticizing those in power. There's politicians, government authorities, wealthy people, authoritarians, people who have lots of power, they need to be criticized. And don't worry about them. If you see me criticizing someone you like, they have more power than I do. They can push back, they can fight back, they're going to be fine. But I think it's important to speak truth to power, and that means criticizing it. I'm not a fan of any president, really. If you think I'm picking on one president, just hang around long enough, you'll see me picking on another president. But the second first principle, being accurate is more important than being right. There's a million places on the internet where you can get, partisan red meat for your red or your blue divide. That's not what I do here. I think we need to be accurate. It's more important to have an accurate compass that tells you where you are when you're lost than to think you're always right and you're always heading in the right direction. So I always base, if I'm criticizing someone, it's going to be based on really good research, and I'm not going to just shotgun it. And also, if someone I loathe or despise or don't agree with, or I'm just completely opposite on everything, if they do something right, I think that's important to call out as well. And I'm going to explain what they did right and why I think it's right. The first principle, any virtue in isolation of the system of virtues becomes a vice. I think too often today, people pick one virtue, they isolate it from everything else, they ramp that up to 1,000 miles an hour, and then it becomes a vice and they don't really realize it. So I try and keep things very balanced on this. And as a follow-up, concern and isolation of reason is not a virtue. Being afraid is not an argument. We have a tendency today to elevate our fears and our concerns. And there's lots of valid reasons to have concerns. But what I see a lot is people, especially YouTube content producers, they're taking those fears and those concerns and making it an argument in of itself. They want those engagement clicks. They want to drive that traffic, and they'll make all sorts of disaster predictions. So even though I'm a specialist in violence and instability, you're not going to see me hyping up the fear angle. I want to explain to you why these things are happening and what's actually going on so you can understand the context better yourself. I don't want to make you so terrified you're afraid to get out of the door in the day. That leads to the next first principle. No matter what they say, it's never World War III. It's become a running joke on the InfoMullet as every foreign crisis, everyone's running around saying, oh, it's World War III, World War III. It never is. It's never World War III. We're going to get through it. Finally, I'm a radical moderate, not a rhetorical eunuch. That means I'm going to throw some punches. I'm going to throw some jabs. I used to be a bouncer. I used to be a stand-up comic. I used to do comedy improv. I have a heckling response in me. I have a little bit of humor. You're going to see that. It keeps things lively and entertaining. But if you're looking for just somebody reading blank facts and just kind of not taking an opinion on things, that's factual reporting, which is good. I'm an analyst. That means I take the facts, I look at them, I analyze them in a structure that I try and be transparent about. I declare my biases here, but I provide you my analysis and commentary. And if that isn't for you, there's lots of other places on the internet you can go to. And with that last principle in mind, here's the obligatory and probably not very helpful disclosure that anything I say or write on the blog is my personal opinion. It's not a reflection of any particular company, organization, or governmental agency. Likewise, if we have a guest on there, what they say is their opinion. It's not a reflection of what I believe or necessarily what any place they work for or associate with believe. That's not what we do here. We're having a conversation. We're trying to give more context, but don't get it twisted. And as a final disclosure, violence and instability can be complicated. Don't consider anything I say as professional advice on the topic. And please don't try any of this at home. Every situation is different. Circumstance matters. One size won't fit all. If you are trying to destabilize a country or someone's trying to destabilize your country and you want to counter it, please Seek out a licensed, certified professional consigliere who can help you find the plan that's right for you. And if you don't know any, well, check with Bonkey out back on the couch there. He may know a guy or gal to help out. Welcome to the InfoMullet.